Welcome to the local NAS server move demonstration. This demonstration will cover moving a NAS server ownership to the PRSP. Client access to file data is also monitored during the NAS server move operation. In Unisphere, we see on this system there are two NAS servers, NAS NFS on SPA and NAS SMB on SPB. The NAS NFS server has been configured for the NFS protocol NFS v3. Now we'll take a look at the NFS shares, and we see it has a root export. Now from a client, let's verify its mount status to that export. And we see it has the export mounted, and it is accessing that remote file system. Here's a simple while true script that prints out the date to the console and to a file that's on the file system and repeats it every 2 seconds. That's how we're going to test client access during the move operation. So we'll go back to Unisphere, go back to the NAS servers page, and configure a move operation for the NAS NFS NAS server. So we'll go to its properties page. You see it's currently owned by SPA, and we'll switch that to SPB. And from this confirmation window, we can see it states the move can be disruptive to client access. Okay, so that move operation is ready to be applied. We'll go back to the client and start its script. And we see every line of time increments by 2 seconds. Now we'll initiate that move operation and quickly go back to the client, and we'll watch the time being displayed, and we see there's a disruption in that 2-second cadence between lines at 44:52 seconds and 44:58 seconds. And then after that, it's a 2-second interval between lines. So it appears that the move operation, the transition from one SP to another, occurred during that little gap in time. We see in Unisphere that the move operation, the background job, is still running. The client is still in the move operation just completed. So we can break out of that script. We'll take a look at the file that was written to the file system. And we see the same time gap at 44 minutes 52 seconds to 44 minutes 58 seconds. And then after that, it incremented nicely every 2 seconds. So although there was a slight disruption to the client, it continued to perform its write operations after the transition. So we'll go back to Unisphere and take a look at the logs and see if we can correlate some transition times. So at 44:54, the transition to the other storage processor occurred. And at 44:57, we're back from failure, meaning the PRSP picked up. So that correlates nicely to how the client saw data access. So now we'll return to the NAS server page or tab. And now we'll do the same thing but for the NAS SMB, and we're going to see the effect of this move on an SMB client. So the shares top dollar on this NAS SMB NAS server from the top of that file system. We'll go to a client, and we can see that client has that share mounted mapped to drive letter Z. Now we're going to open PowerShell and use that for the scripting. We'll go to drive letter Z here, and this script that you'll see now it does basically the same thing. It runs the date command and sends the output to a file called time.txt on the Z drive. It echoes the date and with the time to the console and sleeps for 2 seconds and repeats over and over until we break out. So back in Unisphere, we'll go to the NAS server tab. We'll select the NAS SMB NAS server from its properties page. We're going to change the current owner from SPB to SPA. And we see the same message, and do note that this client accessing data is just an SMB3 client. It isn't SMB3 plus CA. So now that we get the move all queued up, let's start the script on the client, and we see the time incrementing by 2 seconds with every line. Back in Unisphere, we can initiate the move operation with the apply button. And quickly back to the client, we see a slight break in time between 50 minutes 21 seconds and 50 minutes 25, and then the client continues nicely every 2 seconds after that. So looks like that's when the transition happened. Back in Unisphere, we see the move job in the background is ongoing, and it just completed. Takes some time to complete. Now we can go back to the client and break out of the script. And we're going to now take a look at the file that was written to the file system during the transition. And from the lines of text in the file system, 5021, yeah, there it is. 5021 to 5025 seconds, and after that it continued on nicely every 2 seconds. So the transition happened between that time gap, and then it recovered nicely and continued on operating as normal. So now we'll go back to Unisphere and we'll take a look at the logs and see if we can verify or correlate those times. So transition to other storage processor 5023, so that correlates nicely. These logs for the SMB server look a little bit different than the NFS server. You see at 5102, the NAS server is operating normally. So that correlates nicely with what the client saw. And back in Unisphere on the NAS server page, we see that the NAS NFS NAS server is on SPB now, and the NAS SMB NAS server is on SPA. So this concludes the demonstration. Thank you.